So today I finished all of the prequel stories for A Song of Ice and Fire. That being the novellas of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms that George R. R. Martin made a while back. And to tell you the truth, I am genuinely floored by the overall quality of all three novellas or little short stories. I had figured that they were going to be really good. I mean, they are a George R. R. Martin product and A Song of Ice and Fire product after all, but I am genuinely baffled by how much I thoroughly enjoyed and loved my experience reading these three novellas. So I figured the best way to open up my conversation regarding these novellas would be to rank them from least favorite to favorite, and I say that because they are all fantastic, and it's not a question of which one has the most bad moments, it's a question of which one has the most moments that I absolutely love and adore. And with that being said, massive spoiler warning for the upcoming HBO show, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I will be getting into spoilers, so you have been warned. In third place, I have the last novella, and the novella that I finished today, The Mystery Knight. And The Mystery Knight was unbelievable, specifically because of how enjoyable the world building in this segment of the story was. I feel this was the novella where the world really opened up. Up until this point in the first two novellas, we heard a lot about the Blackfire rebellions and what went down, and we kind of felt the ripple effects, as in what was left over from the first Blackfire rebellion, but we never really saw firsthand how there still are uprisings, how the Blackfire rebellions are still affecting the Seven Kingdoms in this present moment. But in Novella 3, we actually get a first-hand experience from Dunk and Egg as to what the start or embers of a rebellion really look like. Some highlights of this entire novella for me were Dunk and Egg really coming into their own as characters. They had been doing this for the previous two novellas, but in this one, this is where their relationship really became ironclad. This is where Egg really comes into his own as a leader and understanding what it means to be a good leader and a good person. And I really enjoyed the final fight that Dunk has, where he just truly comes into his own as a fighter, and The Mystery Knight was really enjoyable in terms of just Dunk and Egg, but where this novella really shines in comparison to the others is the side characters. There is the Bastard of Fireball, who was an incredibly enjoyable and honest character, a man that I wasn't sure if I was going to like too much when we were first introduced to him, but you can't help but root for a guy who's been tortured and is missing nails and teeth, but still fights for what's right and stands up for what he believes in. But if you've read The Mystery Knight, you probably know what I'm going to be talking about next, that being the highlight of this novella, and that is the cameo of Bloodraven. At the end of the story, a younger Bloodraven actually appears to personally stop the start of this second Blackfire rebellion, and we find out that the saying, Bloodraven has 1,000 eyes and one, is decently true because he's actually able to use sorcery to disguise himself and slip into the wedding. That way he can know what's going on the inside. And I thoroughly enjoyed actually getting to see and engage with Bloodraven in a proper manner, other than him just being a half weirwood tree monster in A Dance with Dragons. And beyond that, I couldn't believe we actually got to see a little Walder Frey in The Mystery Knight. When the little Frey child is just being annoying, I was like, do the ages line up? Is Walder Frey in the main series old enough to be this child? And turns out I was correct. This is the Walder Frey that commits the atrocity of the Red Wedding. And there's this great line where Dunk says that child should be thrown down a well, and I agree with Dunk, that still should happen in the main series, and I hope that Walder Frey's ending is met with him being tossed down a well. All in all, The Mystery Knight was an absolutely amazing novella. I would give it like a 9.5 out of 10 on a scale. It's just, for me personally, I prefer the aspects of the Hedge Knight and the Sworn Sword a little better, because The Mystery Knight is very much focused on world building, while I feel the first two novellas are much more character focused. And with that being said, Coming in second place, I have the first novella, The Hedge Knight. The Hedge Knight is one of my favorite openings to a story, period. Within the first 3 pages, we understand what kind of character and man Dunk is, we understand his goals, we can kind of get a good grasp of the direction that the story is taking, but where this story really picks up is when they actually get to the tournament at Ashford, and again, this novella shines in very similar ways that The Mystery Knight shines, with a lot of really interesting characters popping up. We have a lot of really interesting, unique, and thoroughly well-written Targaryens popping up in The Hedge Knight, and they add an amount of intrigue to this part of the story that I wasn't expecting and thoroughly enjoyed. I have spoken very highly of the likes of Baelor Breakspear in the past, but Maekar was also an incredibly interesting character. Introducing Egg was also incredibly interesting, but beyond that, the reason Novella 1 stands out so much for me is, especially in comparison to other A Song of Ice and Fire stories, it is just so refreshing to have a POV character who is just so wholly good. Dunk in Novella 1 is this breath of fresh air that you're not really expecting. He is kind of an anomaly to the A Song of Ice and Fire world, because he's the type of man that just does the right thing and acts before he thinks, just based off of his instincts that are usually kind and just. With the highlight of this novella being, obviously if you've read it, the ending. Dunk's Trial of Seven is one of the most interesting and tragic bits of storytelling that I have seen in A Song of Ice and Fire. First of all, just the way George describes combat in the novellas, the way he draws it out, the way he explains the pain, what it feels like to be on the ground, is incredibly real and incredibly visceral, and I don't understand how he has such a great understanding of what this kind of combat looks like, but it is incredibly interesting and incredibly engaging, just on a fundamental, fun, and brutal level. But beyond that, there's so much going on during this Trial of Seven. There are so many different characters engaging. There are dreams and prophecies and talk of dragons and talk of the future, and just ending his trial with what is, in my opinion, one of, if not the most tragic death in the A Song of Ice and Fire universe, that being the death of Baelor Breakspear, really cements Novella 1 as just a phenomenal piece of storytelling. There is this through line throughout the first novella of what makes a good knight, what makes a good man, and the fact that you need to be a good man to be a good knight. I also love the symbolism and the theory that Dunk isn't actually a knight at all. This theory pops up from Novella 1. When Dunk is asked how he is knighted, it doesn't really give a straight answer. It kind of sounds like he's making up excuses as to why no one really knows, and every time he's asked about how he got knighted, he shows this nervous tic. He'll click his feet, or look around, or not lock eyes with people, and it is again just this great moment in storytelling where George R. R. Martin is trying to tell the reader that it's not the title that makes the man, it's the man that makes the title. So all in all, The Hedge Knight Novella 1 is a phenomenal piece of storytelling, and it was really close, almost tied to the novella that I have in the number 1 spot. But with that being said, my favorite novella, my favorite prequel story of A Song of Ice and Fire in general is Novella 2, The Sworn Sword. And 2 days ago, or yesterday, depending on when you're watching this, I actually posted a whole long video that primarily talks about why I love The Sworn Sword so much, but just generally speaking, the reason I feel The Sworn Sword is almost perfect is it is so incredibly low stake, which gives the characters time to really grow and time to really shine. This is where Dunk and Egg truly come into their own. This is where you see their relationship develop and blossom into something truly beautiful. This is where you see Dunk become a true knight in every sense of the word. I just absolutely adore how at the end of the story he is just doing everything he possibly can to keep the peace, even if that means taking on harm that he doesn't deserve. And he does this just because it's the right thing to do. Dunk comes to the conclusion that in this world, the purpose of power and what strong leaders should be responsible for doing is taking the blows for other people, stepping in and being the bigger person when the time is right, and doing everything that you can to make sure that the peace is kept throughout the realm. I'm also just such a sucker for a good romance story, and Dunk's slow burn of falling in love with Rohan is just so perfect, and the payoff at the end where he kisses her and decides not to take a horse to remember her by, but to take the braid by cutting it off, this braid that he's been looking at and eyeing for so long. It's just so symbolic of who Dunk is as a character and as a man. He is a person who places much more value on who you are, what things mean, rather than just how much things cost or if they will better him in the long run. He is just a quality individual by this point, and in my opinion, The Sworn Sword is not only the best novella, but one of the best A Song of Ice and Fire related stories, period. But with all that being said, please let me know in the comments down below what your ranking of the 3 A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms novellas is. Is it similar to mine, or is it completely different? And also, feel free to join my Discord server and let me know what other kind of videos you want to see from this channel moving forward. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day. Peace.